Over the past week, I've worked for over 90 hours vibe coding with GPT 5.5 and Claude Opus 4.7. I made $15,000 in the last week with the launch of BridgeSpace 3, which I used Claude Opus 4.7 to help me launch. In this video, I'm going to be telling you guys which model I think is better, GPT 5.5 or Claude Opus 4.7. As you guys can see here, this is what my workflow has actually looked like over the past week. I've been using Codex agents, I've been using Claude Code agents, but I really want to cover everything that there is to know about both of these models now that we have them. I'm going to be sharing with you a couple different scenarios of how these models have performed in my workflow over the past week. We're going to be taking a look at BridgeBench. We're going to be taking a look at other important benchmarks. And really what I want to do with this video is give you guys an accurate view of how these models are performing. I don't want to hype things up. As you guys know, I don't want to be a content creator. Vibe coding is always going to be my first thing that I just love doing. Content creation is something that I do after the fact. So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to try and give you guys a very concise view of how these models are performing, what I think of them, and give you some real world examples of how they're performing in real vibe coding workflows. Okay, the first thing that I'm going to cover is the benchmarks that were released with the GPT 5.5 launch. So as you guys can see here, Terminal Bench 2.0, GPT 5.5 does very good in this benchmark. It always has. It scores an 82.7% in this benchmark versus Claude Opus 4.7, 69.4%. But really the benchmark that I'm most interested in when vibe coding is the BridgeBench Pro benchmark and BridgeBench Verified benchmark. So if you guys look at this, this is the blog that was released by OpenAI. And I just want to show you how far down the benchmark is hidden for BridgeBench Pro. So keep scrolling, keep scrolling, keep scrolling, keep scrolling, keep scrolling, keep scrolling, keep scrolling. Okay, here it is. So here is the BridgeBench Pro benchmark hidden in this blog. And what you're going to see when you actually dive deep on this is that GPT 5.5 is actually not that big of an improvement from GPT 5.4. If you guys look right here, let me just kind of highlight this to you. So GPT 5.4 scored a 57.7% on BridgeBench Pro, and GPT 5.5 scores a 58.6% on BridgeBench Pro. So a very small incremental improvement from 5.4 to 5.5. And when you do compare that to Opus 4.7, you're going to see that Opus 4.7 MOGs on this benchmark, it's at 64.3% versus 58.6%. Now, this benchmark, you can say that, okay, these labs are benchmaxing. We'll give GPT 5.5 a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. But in general, this is what I have noticed from 5.5 is that when rumors were going around about 5.5 being released, it was like everybody was saying Spud, this is the biggest leap since, '01. This was not a leap. GPT 5.5 from the use that I've had with it is an incremental improvement. It's not a leap. And I think that this benchmark does prove that a little bit. Like when you look at 57.7 versus 58.6, you're not going to feel a big jump in vibe coding capabilities when the BridgeBench Pro, which is a coding benchmark, only improved by 0.9%, literally under a percent. So that's what I'm seeing with GPT 5.5. But let's move on with some actual real world examples now. The first example that I want to show you guys is this scenario where I gave GPT 5.5 and Claude Opus 4.7 the same prompt to try and find a bug that I was having inside of BridgeMind. So the bug at hand was that we had just introduced a new Ultra subscription, and users that were on this Ultra subscription were having trouble accessing Bridge Voice because initially Bridge Voice was pro-gated, which just means that only pro subscribers could use it. But now we added in an additional subscription tier that people were unable to use Bridge Voice that had that higher subscription tier, even though they should have, right? So I gave the same prompt to GPT 5.5 and Claude Opus 4.7, and Claude Opus 4.7, it came back to me. And the number one reason that it said it could be, it came back with me with 3 options. So it didn't actually find the bug. It said, hey, here are 3 things that could potentially be causing this bug. And the first thing on that list was double check your environment variables. And I have to say, this actually like gaslit me. I was like, okay, I know they're set. And this issue that we're having has nothing to do with environment variables. So that gaslit me. In GPT 5.5, though, if you look at this, you can see it came back and it just said the smoking gun is in Stripe service has active pro subscription. And it found the bug. It was just related to the subscription guard, okay? And when I gave them these prompts, I was like, you know what? That's probably the issue. Is it's something associated with the enum, something associated with the subscription guard. And I knew that going into it. But GPT 5.5 found this immediately. Okay. And Claude Opus 4.7, if I was only using Opus 4.7, it would have sent me on a wild goose chase checking my environment variables, whereas GPT 5.5 was able to find this immediately. The reason that this is happening is because GPT 5.5 is the most intelligent model in the world. As you guys can see here from the Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index, GPT 5.5 ranks number 1, scoring 60, which is 3 points higher than Claude Opus 4.7 and Gemini 3.1 Pro and the legacy model GPT 5.4. So when you're working in the back end, when you're working on tasks where, let's say, you have a bug, GPT 5.5 is actually going to excel. The next thing that I want to show you guys is something that you can now do using GPT 5.5 Codex that you can't do with Claude Opus 4.7. So check this out. Last week, we got 2 things from OpenAI. We got GPT Image 2 and we got GPT 5.5. So if you didn't know, GPT Image 2 is now by far the best image gen model on the market. Nothing even comes close. If you look at LM Arena here, you can see that GPT Image 2 is literally more than 200 ELO above any other model. It's insane. So it crushes Nano Banana and it's not even close. But what I've been doing is I've been using GPT 5.5 inside of Codex. And what you can now do is you can now actually prompt Codex to create images for you inside of your website. So let's say that you need infographic images, which I did for this. GPT 5.5 was able to create the images inside of Codex. So I literally just prompted Codex here on the left, and I said, hey, I want you to look at this page. I want you to actually create an infographic image that would flow with the website. And this is what it created. It created this image that you see here, and it created this image that you see here. So it's not perfect, but this is something that you can now do using GPT 5.5 and Codex that you couldn't do with Claude Opus 4.7 in Claude Code because they don't even have an image model, right? So this was an interesting thing that I did last week that I think I did it on the Bridge Voice page too. Let's go over to Bridge Voice. I'm pretty sure I created an image over there as well. Let's check it out. So yeah, I did the same thing. So this here, this was an image that was created to represent Bridge Voice, and it did another one here. So these images were created using GPT 5.5 Codex, and this is just something really interesting that you can do using GPT 5.5 Codex that you can't do using Claude Opus 4.7. One of the biggest issues with GPT 5.5 is its front-end design capabilities. And with the launch of GPT 5.5, everybody was saying, hey, the UI design capabilities are going to be way better. We're working on it. It's going to be really good at front-end design. And this is not the case, especially after using it in my vibe coding workflow. I can confirm that this is not a good front-end design model. So here's GPT 5.5 on Design Arena. So this is a leaderboard that basically measures the design capabilities of a model. And as you guys can see here, GPT 5.5 is way behind on this list. It's ranked number 11 in Design Arena, whereas Claude Opus 4.6 and Claude Opus 4.7 are way up front, especially like if you use the front-end design plugin, which I use. Claude Opus 4.7 just does an incredible job on design, and GPT 5.5 doesn't even come close. I used Claude Opus 4.7 to completely redesign the BridgeMind website, and if we just kind of scroll down the landing page, okay, what you're going to notice is that, yeah, like if you use that front-end design plugin, it's actually going to do an incredibly good job. It creates unique components, it changes the layouts, it changes the backgrounds, it has animations, it makes each section feel like its own. You can see with the subtle background changes. It's very good, and it does a very good job. And GPT 5.5 just still gives you that AI look. And I think that when you're talking about front-end design, you want it to have a custom feel. You want it to have a non-AI feel. Because if you have a beautiful design for your product is just going to do better. So design is an incredibly important aspect of vibe coding. So the fact that GPT 5.5 isn't doing a good job on this is a huge problem. One really interesting benchmark is the LM Arena benchmark. So this is a benchmark that basically puts models head to head and users vote on which they think is better, and it's anonymous. But GPT 5.5 ranks number 9 on the code benchmark. But I want you to know that this code benchmark, it's actually a UI benchmark, because most of what people create in this benchmark is they create single HTML files, they create like React websites, and then they vote on it. And what you can see here is this benchmark, it's a UI benchmark. So I think that it's getting harder and harder for us to be able to benchmark these models. And the reason that GPT 5.5 performs so poorly on this benchmark as well as the design arena benchmark is that, yeah, GPT 5.5 is terrible at design. You just can't use it for front-end design. And Claude Opus 4.7 excels in it. It's the best design model. And if you're designing, you pretty much have to use Claude Opus 4.7 in my opinion. The next thing that I want to talk about is pricing, and I want you guys to know that GPT 5.5 came with a significant price hike. So if you look at GPT 5.4, GPT 5.4 was priced at $2.50 per million on the input, $15 per million on the output. GPT 5.5 now got a 100% increase in the cost, $5 per million on the input and $30 per million on the output, making it more expensive than Claude Opus 4.7, which is priced at $5 per million on the input and $25 per million on the output. But every time that I make a post about this on X, people go crazy, and there's a reason for that. So if you pull up the token efficiency, this is where things get a little bit more complicated when it comes to pricing. So let's just go down to token efficiency here. If you look at the token efficiency, what you're going to see is that even though GPT 5.5 is priced higher than Claude Opus 4.7, when you're actually using GPT 5.5 in a workflow, it's going to cost you less tokens than Claude Opus 4.7. So check this out. To run it through this benchmark, it did cost $3,357 for GPT 5.5, and for Claude Opus 4.7, it was 50% more expensive. You can see Claude Opus 4.7 costs $4,800. One thing that you do need to look at, though, is that Claude Opus 4.6 was more expensive to run than Claude Opus 4.7, meaning that Anthropic made it a little bit cheaper. The token efficiency is a little bit better with Claude Opus 4.7 versus Claude Opus 4.6. But then GPT 5.5, it is more expensive than GPT 5.4. Look at this. What is that? Maybe like a little bit under 20%, maybe like 18%, 2850 versus 3357. So it is more expensive. GPT 5.5 is more expensive than GPT 5.4. Now, it's not more expensive than Claude Opus 4.7, but you guys do need to know that, like, yeah, it got more expensive to use GPT 5.5. And I have noticed in my ChatGPT Pro subscription, usage limits now are a thing. The next thing that I want to talk about is speed, because speed is very interesting. When you look at the artificial analysis benchmark, it does say that GPT 5.5 is faster than Claude Opus 4.7. But just so you guys know, artificial analysis has a partnership with OpenAI. I think that you can see this plain as day because as soon as OpenAI released the model, it wasn't available via the API, and immediately the results were in artificial analysis. And it's possible that OpenAI was able to work with artificial analysis to make sure that they got the best speeds or something, because they benchmarked this at 72 tokens per second and Claude Opus 4.7 at 46 tokens per second. So what I want to do is I actually want to go over to OpenRouter, and as you can see in OpenRouter, the throughput, the tokens per second, is 46.5 tokens per second for Claude Opus 4.7. But if you look at GPT 5.5, look at this. The throughput, the tokens per second, is 37 tokens per second via OpenAI. So literally half of the speed that's represented in artificial analysis, which is just insane. In real vibe coding workflows, Codex with GPT 5.5 is insanely slow. This is an example from yesterday. So as you guys can see, I asked Claude Code and GPT 5.5 and Codex what version is Bridge Voice on. Claude Code came back to me after 10 seconds. All it had to do was look at the package.json file. And Codex came back to me after over 2 minutes, and it said, oh, it's on this version. Why does Codex take so long to come back to me with such simple tasks? I'm literally on GPT 5.5 high here, and it took that long to come back to me, where with Claude Opus 4.7, I was on high effort there as well. And it just takes way longer for Codex to do anything, even the simplest of tasks. I did get the chance to put both GPT 5.5 and Claude Opus 4.7 through BridgeBench, and I think that the results are actually pretty surprising. For me personally, looking at this, it's very surprising to see the results on BridgeBench. This is the world's #1 vibe coding benchmark, which puts it through different categories of vibe coding tasks, okay? And the hallucination benchmark is the first thing that I want to cover. So if you look at this, Claude Opus 4.7, it ranks #5 on the hallucination benchmark. And all the way down here, GPT 5.5 at number 13, GPT still has not solved its hallucination problem. Hallucination is basically where AI models will fabricate false claims. And if you have a model that hallucinates as much as GPT 5.5, it's going to be very difficult to get any real work done or solve issues because the hallucination rate, it can be super confident in telling you that, hey, this is correct, and it's just not correct. Another thing that I noticed is that GPT 5.4 to GPT 5.5, it actually regressed in its reasoning capabilities. So look at this. GPT 5.4 scored a 40.6 on this benchmark, and GPT 5.5 scored a 39.7 on this benchmark. Whereas with 4.6 to 4.7, it actually saw a pretty big jump. It went from number 9 to number 4. So this is one thing that I want to talk about. I've been vibe coding for over 3 years now, and I've been in the space for some pretty big leaps, okay? GPT 4.0 was a leap in capability. O1 was a leap in capability. Opus 4.5 was a leap in capability. And what I want to say is that Opus 4.7 and GPT 5.5, neither of these models are leaps. If you look at the overall rankings on BridgeBench, what you're going to notice is that Claude Opus 4.6 and Claude Opus 4.7 are literally right next to each other. Same thing with GPT 5.4 and 5.5. And in fact, it actually regressed a little bit for both. And you may look at that and be like, what? Look at all this and look at all that. And guys, like I said, I've been in the space long enough to know when a model is a leap, and neither of these models are leaps. Look at this. Claude Opus 4.6 to Claude Opus 4.7 on BridgeBench security, 81.6 to 76, okay? Anthropic acknowledged that Opus 4.7 was not as good at coding security as Opus 4.6, and this is reflected in BridgeBench. If you look at the UI capabilities, look at this. UI, Opus 4.6 to Opus 4.7, 81.1 to 78.4. This is also backed by Design Arena. Look at this. Opus 4.6 scores better on Design Arena than Opus 4.7. People think that Opus 4.6 is better than Opus 4.7 on design. It's reflected in BridgeBench, okay? So there's multiple sources that you can pull together, and I will say this. Neither of these models are actually that good of improvements. I think that there's so much hype in the space, and there's so many people that as soon as a new model comes out, they have no idea what they're talking about. They aren't even like really vibe coders, right? And they get a new model and they look at the benchmarks that the AI companies are providing, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing since sliced bread. This thing is insane. This might be AGI. And this is just not the case. I hate to say it, but we were really excited for both of these models, Opus 4.7 and GPT 5.5. But the truth of it is that neither of these models are actually that good of improvements. I've been using this, like I said, 90 hours last week. And I'm like, honestly, neither of these are actually big improvements. With that being said, I do want to circle back and answer the question, hey, which model should I be using for vibe coding, GPT 5.5 or Claude Opus 4.7? Which one is better? And I will say this. Claude Opus 4.7 is the better overall choice across all different categories. It does score higher and it does perform better for vibe coding. But like I said earlier in the video, hey, GPT 5.5 is inherently a more intelligent model with better IQ scores than Claude Opus 4.7. So I do, and I will always say this, there is room for both in your workflow. So if you have the budget, I have 2 Claude Max subscriptions. I did recently cancel one of those because I do think that GPT 5.5 can now be used as your main driver for like backend work. If you go back to this example, hey, GPT 5.5 was able to immediately find this bug in my backend where Claude Opus 4.7 sent me on a goose chase. Another thing to take into account is the cost efficiency. Claude Opus 4.7 with a max subscription, $200 a month, I hit my rate limits in the 5-hour block inside of 2 hours every single day. And with Codex, with GPT 5.5, with a ChatGPT Pro subscription, I don't hit my limits. They're a thing now that GPT 5.5 is a little bit more expensive, but with the ChatGPT Pro subscription, the $200 plan, I have no issues with rate limits. So that's another thing where, hey, if you are a budget vibe coder, you have to go with GPT 5.5 because of the cost efficiency. Like, you can't be running Claude Opus 4.7 if your budget is $20 a month. So if you have a budget of $20 a month, then the answer is GPT 5.5. Go with that one. But if overall no budget, right, $200 a month budget, hey, Claude Opus 4.7 is inherently the best coding model on the market. It hallucinates less, it has better reasoning capabilities, it has better design capabilities, it's faster, it's more reliable, and I find myself using both. And that's one precursor that I do want to say, is that GPT 5.5 is an incredibly capable model, especially on the back end and especially when it comes to rate limits. But I do think that you do get what you pay for. And there is a reason that Claude Opus 4.7 is a more expensive model, right? Like, that's just economics 101. There's a reason that Claude Opus 4.7 is more expensive. And in my opinion, in a lot of instances, is because, yeah, I mean, it is a better model. GPT 5.5, sometimes I find myself using it and I'll build one thing and break two others. And I'm like, okay, why did you do that? Well, I forgot. It's because your hallucination rate is so high, right? So you'll do one thing and then you'll just hallucinate about breaking two other features that were linked to this one. So, that's what I find it doing. But there are so many instances, right? There's so many arguments, right? And I think that this is the biggest thing that I want to emphasize, is that both of these models are incredible. And what it really comes down to is your preference. I find myself gravitating towards Claude Opus 4.7. Claude Opus 4.7 built this browser tool for me inside of BridgeSpace here. So look at BridgeSpace. I now have a browser tool where I can select HTML elements. I now have this super cool bridge feature. So watch this. Open 6 more Claude code agents in this. This is an agent that literally works inside of my workspace, and I can talk to it and it's able to do things for me.
Up.
So, this was built using Claude Code with Claude Opus 4.7.
6 more Claudes spinning up.
There's also a notification system that I built using Claude Opus 4.7. Just the entire design that you see was built using Claude Opus 4.7. So I find myself personally using Claude Opus 4.7. GPT 5.5, I think that it does excel in backend. I think that there are, different instances where, for example, hey, if you get a bad result with Claude Code on the backend or something related to security, hey, pass it into GPT 5.5. It's going to think longer and it's going to take a little bit longer to get to that result, but it probably is going to get the result in the backend code pretty well. So that's one thing to note, is that, hey, you need to account so many different things, and you can't just look at one benchmark to know this model is better than that one. I think that this is such a complex discussion that we're having, and I would love to hear what you guys think in the comments below. Let me know which model you're using and why. It actually helps me a ton just to hear from the BridgeMind community, which is the home of the vibe coding movement, just what people are using. If you haven't already joined the BridgeMind community, make sure you do so. There's a link to the Discord in the pinned comment as well as the description. And if you haven't already liked and subscribed and turned on post notifications, make sure you do so you get updates from the channel. I'm pretty much live every day that I'm able to. Vibe coding an app until I make $1 million. I'm currently at 144,000 in ARR. But ultimately, guys, I have just not been very impressed with either model. Opus 4.7 and 5.5, I think that both of these models were hyped up quite a bit, and the hype was bigger than the results. We were expecting a monumental leap. Neither model was a monumental leap. There were small incremental improvements across several key categories. They are better models for sure, but just not across all different categories. And it's not the leap that we were hoping for. But with that being said, I do recommend Claude Opus 4.7. And I also recommend getting both subscriptions and using GPT 5.5. I recommend GPT 5.5 if you're on a budget. GPT 5.5 excels in backend. Claude Opus 4.7 excels in front end and reasoning. So it's a big topic of discussion, right? But you guys will see me use Claude Code definitely more so in streams than Codex, just because that's what builds for me. That's what I find building for me, and that's what works for me. But with that being said, I will see you guys in the future.